Reppin' Philly ain't a choice, it's a way of life. PhillyGoat.com is your one-stop shop for Philly pride. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Look fresh, stay Philly, Philly Goat. Go Birds. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for August 13th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy hump day to everybody out there. Got a lot to get to today, so let's get right into it. But first, I can't tell you enough. Go to Philly Goat, scroll through the site. I feel like every time I see it, there's a new shirt. Ones that I've missed. So go to Philly Goat. Be sure to use that promo code. Obviously, the hot shirt right now after the Phillies called it the other night is the Go Phils with all the Phils listed. One of my favorite shirts that Philly Goat has. So go to Philly Goat. Have to give them a shout out for that. Being recognized by the Phillies broadcast booth for the Go Phils shirt, which is absolutely amazing. On the field was not good last night for the Phils. 6-1. Offensively, they couldn't get it going, and you've won 4 in a row. I think it was 7 out of 8. So obviously, you're going to have games. You're not going to win them all. But the more concerning thing is the starting pitching now. Ranger Suarez did not look good. His velocity was down. We saw that with Sanchez to a certain point. We've seen it with Wheeler and now Ranger. I'm not sure what's going on, but help is on the way. Nola made his final, hopefully, start at AAA last night. Was solid, gave up 2 runs, struck out 11, I think like 5 2/3 innings. Not sure how it's going to play out. They may be looking to have him pitch later this weekend. And then from there, who knows? Before, when it was just Wheeler, I'm like, okay, let Wheeler skip a start or something like that. But now it's Ranger, and I don't know if some of this comes from overuse earlier this season, whether it's just a blip on the radar, but it is starting to become concerning, and we'll see how it goes. And there's a lot of options on the table. I'd be hesitant right now with the way that Zach and Ranger both have been pitching recently to take Taijuan out of the starting rotation. Maybe you do a 6-man rotation when Aaron Nola comes back. Maybe you maybe skip a start here or there for Ranger and Zach and let them get geared up. And I'd rather have them sit out now in September than wait, or I'm sorry, in August than in September, because you want them starting to ramp up for the postseason in September. So we'll see how it plays out, but it is a little concerning. And I don't know. That's today's question of the day. Is there cause for concern with the starting rotation, or is this just a little blip on the radar? We've heard it 1,000 times this past couple seasons, actually. That's just baseball. So let me know your thoughts. Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Hit me up on any of my socials. Go to the Discord channel, which is the first link in the description. I'm not ready to be concerned yet, but my radar, my spidey senses are tingling with this, because for Ranger, it's been since the All-Star break. Zach Wheeler hasn't looked sharp. We'll see what happens, but Christopher Sanchez takes the mound tonight. Well, this evening, a random 5-10 game in Cincinnati for the Phils, but Christopher Sanchez looks to get the Phillies that series win. But let me know your thoughts, whether we should be concerned with the starting rotation right now, who has been so good the entire season. That's why I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. Maybe it's just, you know what, the ebbs and flows of baseball. And at this point, when things like this started happening last year, the offense was non-existent, but the offense has been keeping them in games. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, my radar is up, and I'm watching this closely now, but let me know your thoughts on whether we should be concerned or not. And then there's a lot of talk yesterday about Kyle Schwarber's comments after the game the other night, uh, which I don't get. Essentially, if you missed it, what he said was he was asked during an interview post-game about whether or not he'd consider signing in Cincinnati, where he's from, his hometown team, and he was very non-committal, which I think the way he's handling the entire thing, I didn't take issue or see any concern with what he said at all. He said, "We'll see what happens if if it works out. If it doesn't," he said, "Childhood Kyle would absolutely love to play for your hometown team, but it's a business." And when this dude is handling this whole situation, so the people that are freaking out, like, "Oh my goodness," and then yesterday he threw out the first pitch to his dad at a Reds game, which is kind of funny, but I don't think you make much of it. I think the Phillies are going to do everything they can to try to re-sign him, but man, like making such an issue out of the fact that he's handling the contract and everything the right way, not disparaging the team, not saying I want to be here or anything like that. Just everybody take a deep breath. Let's focus on the starting pitching right now. We'll deal with Kyle Schwarber later. Let's just enjoy the ride as we go. But Reds, Phillies today at 5:10. I don't know what that is. After school special, maybe? I don't know. But that does lead to yesterday's trivia question. I asked you, for the Reds and the Phillies, what two players were all-stars for both teams since 2000? That would be Nick Castellanos, who was the obvious one, and Scott Rowland. A lot of people forget that he went to Cincinnati and had a couple good years at the end of his career. So Scott Rowland and Nick Castellanos, the only two players to be all-stars for the Reds and the Phillies since 2000. Union are in action tonight. They take on the New York Red Bulls in the U.S. Open Cup quarterfinals. If you've been following this is the game that about a month ago was rained out due to the thunderstorms that came through. So hopefully the Union are able to get this, because this would be a cool little trophy to add to the case en route to hopefully an MLS Cup. But Union, Red Bulls tonight, U.S. Open Cup quarterfinals. And then the Eagles will have a joint practice today and tomorrow with the Cleveland Browns. Usually, a lot of people are saying, and recently, in the way the trend in the NFL has gone, these practices sometimes mean more than the preseason because the starters are actually going to get some reps against an opposing team. So looking forward, yes, it's the Browns, but I still think it's a good measuring test. Their defense is coached by Jim Schwartz, so they're a solid defensive team. Anxious to see Shedeur Sanders, even though you're not going to see much during practice. That'll be more this weekend. But I think this is big for the corners. Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, and Jacorian Bennett to work against other receivers and really kind of separate themselves, because I feel Adoree Jackson right now, from the last thing I read, is slightly ahead of Keely Ringo, but the two of them have been back and forth all training camp, and then you have Jacorian Bennett, who's still getting up to speed. But I think that cornerback spot opposite of Quinyon is wide open, and who wants to take him? So we'll see. And it does seem as though Brett Toth is going to be filling in for Landon Dickerson, which makes sense. It's not a long-term missing time for Dickerson. I don't know if he'll be back for the opener, but I see him being back within the first quarter of the season. So putting Brett Toth in there really makes sense to me. But Eagles, Browns, joint practices today and tomorrow. We'll have updates on them tomorrow. Tomorrow on the show. Let's get into some housekeeping. First, be sure to follow me on social media at Jimbo_Mott on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. And then recapping yesterday's question of the day, we did the top 5 moments for the first 25 years of the century in Philly college sports. We said the question was, is Chris Jenkins' buzzer beater the top moment 100% of you said yes, and it was not even particularly close. Even me, Orange, non-Villanova guy and a huge Temple guy, I had to go. That's the biggest moment. So thank you to everybody who participated. We will have another question of the day later in the show. But let's get into today's top 5 for the first 25 years of the century. Today we're going to talk a little hockey and go to the top 5 Flyers moments. We do have some honorable mentions. Who could forget the 2020 run in the bubble? When the Flyers somehow, when they restarted the season, were able to go on a run and get like the 1 seed or 2 seed and go on a little bit of run, kind of like an outlier in the Flyers playoffs. Then the 2010 Eastern Conference Final, Game 6, when they forced overtime against Tampa Bay before losing Game 7. Lots of good Flyers moments. We left off, I mean, this one's not a positive one, but obviously Game 7 of the 2000 Eastern Conference Final when Eric Lindros got hit by Scott Stevens. That obviously was a moment. Not one we like to remember, but it was a big moment for that. All right, so here is the top 5 list of Flyers moments since 2000. Number 5, the shootout win against the Rangers in 2010 just to get into the playoffs. And we all know the magical run to the Stanley Cup final that the Flyers went on that year. But a lot of people forget because of all of the other things that happened in the playoffs, they had to win a shootout just to get in to the playoffs that year. Number 4 on the list, Jeremy Roenick's overtime winner against Toronto to clinch the series in 2004. It was the conference semifinals. But prior to that, Sammy Kapanen got leveled, could barely make it off of the ice. And as soon as he was brought over, that's when Roenick came down on a 2-on-1 break and scored the goal to end that series. Number 3 on the list, 2012. I remember this one well. It was the shift is what it's called. Claude Giroux against Sidney Crosby opened the game in the playoffs. I believe it was Game 4. Of the 2012 first round playoffs, but he comes out and they had fought the night before, or the game before, comes out, levels Sidney Crosby, and then within 30 seconds scores a goal, kind of setting the tone for that game. So you always love it when our number 1 sports villain gets his butt kicked. All right, the number 2 Flyers moment since 2000, Game 7 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals against the Bruins. Flyers were down 3-0 in the series, battled back to force Game 7, quickly got down 3-0 in Game 7, only to come back and win the game and move on to the conference finals to take the win and make the most improbable comeback that I've ever seen in any sport. Down 3-0 in the series, down 3-0 in Game 7, only to come back and win. And obviously, the number 1 Flyers moment since 2000 happened in 2000, and that is Keith Primo's overtime game winner in Game 5 against the Penguins. That epic, just marathon of a game. I'll never forget it. It was you were up, you were down, you were sleeping, you were awake. It was just outstanding. But that is the number 1 Flyers moment since 2000. What do you got? Who did I miss? Who's too high? Who's too low? Is there something that should have been on there? Plenty of Jeff Carter and Mike Richards moments you could have put on there. But who did I miss as the Flyers' top moment since 2000? To me, Keith Primo, the 5 overtime game winner in 2000, takes the top spot. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, it is Wednesday. That means it's time for What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. Get your 3D custom hype chains. These things are great for fantasy football winners and losers. So go to lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off of your order. And today for What If Wednesday, in honor of Ryan Sandberg, who just recently passed away. Lots of Phillies ties in there. He was the manager, not only with the big league club, but also down at Lehigh Valley. Got his coaching start and worked his way through the Phillies system, but originally was a member of the Phillies. He was traded in 1982 with Larry Bowa to the Cubs for Ivan De Jesus. But we're going to think about and discuss, what if the Phillies had kept Ryan Sandberg? What if could he have had the same impact, the same career if he stayed in Philly? And I guess you start right with the 1983 season, a season in which the Phillies went to the World Series. Joe Morgan started at second base for the Phillies. Had Ryan Sandberg been the guy, I mean, in 1983, he had a better season than Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan was not good in the NLCS, but did have a solid World Series. We talked about it the other day, where he hit 2 home runs. Ryan Sandberg had a breakout season in 1984, so I think it would be fair to say by the end of the 83 season, he probably was feeling pretty good. So could he have made a difference and helped the Phillies win the World Series? I don't know. And then you got to also keep in mind, you would have had Larry Bowa still on this team. Granted, a very older, aging Larry Bowa. But maybe that experience changes the way that World Series plays out. You have Ryan Sandberg, who was about ready to explode on the scene in 1984. So maybe that helps Mike Schmidt out, who didn't have a good World Series against the Orioles anyway. You never know. And then speaking of Schmidt, if you have your infield through the mid to late 80s, Mike Schmidt and Ryan Sandberg, that's pretty formidable. I mean, you had Ryan Sandberg, who won the MVP in 84, Mike Schmidt, who won it in 86. So you'd have, defensively, you'd be great in the infield, but then you'd have 2 legitimate bona fide all-stars offensively as well. Maybe they don't fall off as quickly as they do. Maybe they're competitive with the Mets in the late 80s. I mean, in 1986, Phillies were in second place. A lot of people forget that, but they were 20-some games out. Maybe they pushed the Mets a little bit. And I think more so than anything, you'd have a shot to maybe go back to the World Series in 1984. Phillies kind of fell off, but if you have the jolt of Ryan Sandberg coming up and getting ready to have an MVP type season. The Cubs were the ones who went to the World Series in 1984 from the National League. They won the National League East. So it's feasible that the Phillies could have won back-to-back division titles and made it to the World Series that year. 89, the Cubs won the division. Could they? I mean, the Phillies were terrible in 89, but if you have Ryan Sandberg on your team, that transition post Mike Schmidt is a little easier to deal with. Maybe the mentality and the mindset of the team changes. Free agents, I'm sure, would want to come play, because it's like all this team does is produce all-star, Hall of Fame caliber infielders. You never know how just one person like that is going to change out the whole outlook of a team. And then Sandberg would still have been there in 93. Maybe that helps the shortstop situation out. Maybe Mariano Duncan and Mickey Morandini move to short and kind of platoon there, meaning no Kevin Stocker, but we don't have to deal with the Juan Bell situation. And then all of a sudden you throw Ryan Sandberg in with Dalton, Kruk, Incaviglia, Hollins, Lenny Dykstra, that lineup, which was crazy. Maybe they do win the World Series in 93, and then maybe they don't fall off. Maybe none of this happens. Maybe Ryan Sandberg does not even become half of the player he did in Chicago. But who knows? But let me know your thoughts on that. It's always an interesting what if on What If Wednesday. But this one more so than anything, because it's one of the biggest what ifs in Philly sports. Like, what if they kept Ryan Sandberg? And it was just, he's like the poster child for some of the moves that the Phillies made and the players that they let slip through their hands. But what do you think? Would it have made a difference in the late 80s, early 90s Phillies, who were just awful, awful teams? I find it hard to believe that it wouldn't have. I feel I'm a big believer in if you are a good player, one way or the other, you're going to get discovered. And I think Ryan Sandberg, not Ryan Howard, Ryan Sandberg is one of those guys who he would have excelled anywhere. And who knows, maybe the Phillies win a couple World Series with Ryan because, I mean, it's certainly possible he comes in and makes the difference in 83. But let me know your thoughts here on a What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. Get your 3D custom height chains. Use the promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. All right, so we're going to stick with Ryan Sandberg today for our trivia. And Ryan made an all-star team every year from 1984 to 1993, National League second baseman. During that time, only one Philly second baseman made an all-star game, and he made it to who was the Phillies all-star second baseman from 1984 to 1993. He only made it twice, but it just goes to show the stability that Ryan could have provided to the Phillies roster. So hit me up on the Discord, any of my social media for that. And then August 13th, big day in Phillies and Eagles history. First, we'll go back to 1972. Phillies split a doubleheader at the Vet against the Expos. But that team was just terrible. That 72 team, we talked about it with Steve Carlton winning 27 games, but the team only winning 59. So in order to spice up the crowd experience, Bill Giles decided to hire the great Wallenda to walk from right field to left field on a tightrope high above the Vet. He was successful, but it was a little hairy there at times. About halfway through, he realized the rope wasn't taut enough, kind of panicked, told the people that were sitting below him to move out of the way, just in case he fell. Did complete the walk across the Vet, even did a handstand about halfway through over second base. But it was touch and go there, and I think he made about $3,000 for it. But on this day in 1972, they split the doubleheader, but the great Wallenda walked across the length of the Vet from right field to left field on a tight rope in an effort to spice up the crowd experience. And better way to spice up the crowd than having a guy fall 700 feet from a tightrope on top of you. Anyway. And then fast forward to 2010, Cole Hamels and R.A. Dickey put on a pitcher's duel. Both of them, much like yesterday, both of them pitched a complete game. But R.A. Dickey, who was a Phillies killer, I feel like they never could do anything against him because of the stupid knuckleball. But he only gave up one hit that happened to be to Cole Hamels as the Mets win it 1-0. Cole Hamels, to his credit, only gave up 5 hits, but one of them was an RBI double to Carlos Beltran. But what a pitcher's duel by a guy who always gave the Phillies fits. But R.A. Dickey one hit the Phillies, and that one hit happened to be Cole Hamels, and that happened on this day in 2010. And then let's go do some Eagles. We're at that point where we're going to start switching it up from nonstop Phils, which is a good thing and a bad thing in a way. Like I said before, it means the school year is starting, but it also means football season is around the corner. And first, we'll go back to 2001. Eagles and Ravens were scheduled to play a preseason game today. It was the first game that we were going to attend as season ticket holders. We were looking forward to it. Unfortunately, the Vet had other ideas. The game was postponed and then eventually canceled due to large divots in the turf that just caused unsafe playing conditions. I remember being miserable because you get in there. They delayed the game. We thought it was maybe because of weather. You see that a lot in preseason. Then found out it was the turf. You could see the guys walking out there looking at the turf. And if you've ever seen the video, it was bad. However, we knew the link was on the way. A couple days later, the NFL was like, look, we're not even going to play this game. And to this day, I know I was reading the article as I was brushing up on it yesterday. They were saying that fans were asking for refunds. I don't know if we ever got our refund. I think the Eagles still owe us money. And back then, it wouldn't have been a lot, but they owe us like $30. Yeah, I'm going to have to check in on that. I don't know if I ever got my refund. And then fast forward to 2009, the Eagles shock everyone in the NFL and Philadelphia when they signed Michael Vick to a 2-year deal. The deal was announced roughly around halftime of the preseason game against the Patriots. And I remember everybody in the stadium that day, it was another preseason game we happened to be at, was not happy. Like, it was a split reaction, but kudos to Joe Banner, Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb, who helped lobby for Michael Vick to come to Philly, for giving the dude a second chance. Look, I'm not going to sit here and condone dogfighting, but he did his time, had his punishment, came out, and really seemed to have turned his life around. Was a good piece for the Eagles for a couple years. He's now into coaching. He's down at Norfolk State as the head coach there. And again, I know it was a controversial thing, but I think it was the right move. He certainly held up to his end of the bargain, both all on and off the field. But on this day, the Eagles signed Michael Vick, who was trying to get back into the NFL after being suspended for being in prison for the dogfighting ring. But it really worked out, and it was a move that Vick had an outstanding 2010 season and had solid moments throughout his career, and now is the head coach at Norfolk State. But that all happened on this day in 2009. Be sure to check out Beach Caddy. Still not too late to book a trip to the Jersey Shore and let Beach Caddy take the stress out of it. Use that promo code Jimbo for 15% off your order. Don't forget to like, review, subscribe, and comment on wherever you're listening to this, on my social media, all that other good stuff. It all helps us outsmart the algorithm. On this day in 2009, Eagles signed Michael Vick. 2001, the game against the Ravens was canceled postponed and then canceled due to turf issues at the vet. 2010, Cole Hamels and R.A. Dickey put on a show. Dickey giving up one hit to Cole Hamels as the Mets beat the Phillies 1-0. And then in 1972, the great Wallenda walked across a tightrope at the vet, didn't fall, barely almost didn't fall, but that's how you were trying to get butts in the seats back in the 1970s at the vet. We'll have more on the first Eagles-Browns joint practice, the Union's quarterfinal matchup in the league's U.S. Open Cup, as well as the Phillies-Reds rubber match today. Can the Phils take this series? Can Christopher Sanchez put in a dominant performance? And can the offense score anything today? We'll find that all out tomorrow. And don't forget, tomorrow is Throwback Thursday. Lots to get to tomorrow. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for August 13th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a hump day. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.